Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to today's Gopher Solutions webinar. My name is Tabor Swatsky. I'm with Gopher. For those of you who are new to our webinar series, this is a monthly webinar focusing on a variety of physical education subjects and topics. Some of our past webinar topics have included physical education teachers presenting on specific activities like assessment and fitness. Past presenters have included Dr. Robert Pangrazi and Dr. John Medina and Gene Blades. Our presenters have done a great job of bringing topics and information that have been useful to the field of physical education. Our webinars will almost always occur the third week of the month, and all attendees of today's webinar will receive a certificate of participation for 1 hour of educational credit. All attendees will also be entered to win the Yuki Ball activity valued at $799. This is one of our most popular activity products right now and is only available from Gopher. Today's webinar is titled High Octane Activity Ideas to Fuel Your PE Program with Chad Triolet. And today Chad will discuss strategies, tips, and ideas designed to increase activity levels in your PE class, giving you ideas you can implement into your classes immediately. But before I introduce Chad, I wanted to mention that we will have the chance for questions during the presentation. Your questions are only visible to me, the moderator, so feel free to ask any questions you might have at any time during the presentation. Questions can be typed into the questions area on the right side of your screen at any time during the webinar. We'll accumulate the questions throughout the presentation, and we'll have a chance to address your questions with Chad at the end of the presentation. Today I have the pleasure of introducing our presenter, Chad Triolet. Chad works and lives in Chesapeake, Virginia. He has 18 years of experience as an elementary physical education teacher. He currently is serving as the Safe Routes to School coordinator for his school district. Chad is known for his creative strategies and techniques to help students raise fitness levels and learn and practice critical movement skills and concepts that promote living an active lifestyle. In 2011, he was recognized as the NASPE National Elementary Physical Education Teacher of the Year. So at this time, I will turn the presentation over to our presenter. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you very much, Tabor. I appreciate it. I would like to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully, this will get you kick-started and ready to go. I also want to give a quick thank you to Gopher for the invitation and the opportunity to share this webinar with you. I'm really excited to share this topic, and hopefully you'll get some good information that you can take back and use immediately. We're going to start the presentation by a little bit of audience feedback. We'd like to get some information about what level you teach. On your right-hand side of the panel, you're going to see a poll pop up, and we'll have about 45 seconds to input your answer. Once you select either pre-K, elementary, secondary, or post-secondary, you'll hit the submit button, and in about 45 seconds, the information will calculate, and we'll have a good picture of who is on this call. By doing this, you'll give me an opportunity to cater the presentation a bit to who's attending, and it'll also give me a good picture at the end of our presentation what kind of questions I might receive as we move forward. Please remember, as we're moving through this presentation, my primary experience is at the elementary level, but I have worked with middle school and high school students, and the games and activities that I'll be sharing with you throughout this presentation can be used and modified to any grade level. So we'll give it a few more seconds to calculate and give us a good picture of who we have on the line today. And hopefully that'll be popping up real quick. All right. Okay, we have a good number of elementary and secondary. All right, well, fantastic. Well, I'm very glad to have you all along for the ride today, and no pun intended. And we're going to move on and talk a little bit about high-octane activities. Today we're going to be covering ways to add what I call high-octane activities and concepts into your PE program. Since there's not going to be any face-to-face interaction and therefore no active demonstrations, you're going to need to keep an open mind, and as we go throughout the webinar, I'm going to do my best to explain the activities and give you a good picture of what it would look like with your students. Hopefully you'll be able to take these basic concepts whether it's the actual game itself or the concept, and be able to fold it into your existing program. As we start, we'll be focusing on ways to meet the critical components on this screen as we go through the presentation today. So we'll be talking about maximizing student participation. We'll be focusing on fitness, developing skills, and making sure that learning is taking place. The first thing that we want to do is we want to focus on MVPA. Moderate to vigorous physical activity is simply a measure of a person's level of physical activity. Increasing MVPA in your physical education setting has a very great potential for increasing the health benefits for most of your students. When you look at MVPA, when they talk about moderate physical activity, it's defined loosely as the equivalent of the intensity you would use to get a brisk walk or to go bicycling on a flat plane. Vigorous physical activity is obviously when we're getting our heart rate up a little bit more, when we're doing things like jogging or dancing or bicycling uphill. When we increase the MVPA levels, we're going to be helping our students increase their energy expenditure throughout your your lessons. We're going to be helping your students by contributing to obesity prevention. We're going to be increasing muscular and bone development. Hopefully we'll be reducing anxiety and stress levels. We'll be looking to improve self-esteem, mood, and concentration. And all of these activities, when we're looking at MVPA, will help reduce the risk of chronic disease. Now, the big question is, how do we track our activity levels? Well, there's lots of ways to track activity levels. You can use heart rate monitors, but one of the more simple ways to do that is to use a pedometer. There are a wide variety of pedometers that are available on the market, and they provide you with a multitude of functions, including your steps, distance, activity time, etc. A recent study in Germany found that students who wore pedometers on a daily basis were 33% more active than without them. So it's a really great tool to not only track activity levels, but also to motivate activity levels. In my experience as a physical education teacher, pedometers have been a wonderful motivator to increase our physical activity levels in my classes. My students seem to enjoy using them, and it doesn't matter when I have them. The novelty never seems to wear off. One of the great things about pedometers these days is that it actually has an MVPA calculation function. So the new FitStep Pro is a MVPA pedometer that is downloadable. So not only can the students look and see how long they were in their MVPA, but they can also have it downloaded onto a computer so that you can do spreadsheets and track student progress and student activity levels. So this is a great tool to use as you're trying to add to your high octane physical activities. All right, so this slide lists some of the general types of high-octane activities that you can use to get your students moving. I'm going to give you some examples of these as we go through the presentation today. Relays with a purpose. When I'm talking about relays with a purpose, is not just to do a relay for the sake of a relay, but to have some sort of a goal or an objective when you're doing it. So for example, making sure that your students know how to travel different ways, using locomotor patterns, choosing different ways to do pathways, giving your students physical challenges, having them collect or sort things. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go through these slides. Next, small-sided games and activities are designed to practice and reinforce previously learned skills in small groups. Please note that I said previously learned skills. We shouldn't be teaching skills through small-sided games in most cases because it doesn't give you a chance to get the correct patterns in many cases. So small-sided games kind of happen after you've gone through and taught them the basic components of the skill. It is important to consider personal space, the amount of equipment you have, and the size of your groups when you're doing small-sided games. Large group games can be used to accomplish a number of different learning objectives as well. These activities lend themselves to teaching opportunities that focus on cooperation, communication, and teamwork. They also can be used in a variety of ways to teach and reinforce a variety of movement and manipulative skills. So let's talk a little bit about relays. Oh dear. Now, what I have on the screen right here in this photo is what we would consider to be not best practice in relay lines. The research on physical education says that we should have our students moving about 50%, above 50% of the time when they're in our physical education classes. So if you have a class that's 30 minutes long, you should have the students up and moving for 15 minutes or more. If we have this, what we have on the screen, these students are getting about 16% physical activity time because they're having to wait in a very long line. So this is not what we want to do when we're teaching physical education. Here are some ways that we can change relays to make them a little bit more user-friendly and raise the activity levels. First thing, one of the things that we do at my school is we create really small teams for our relays. So our teams are made up of pairs, 2 people. When you're going, I get to rest, and then when you get back, you get to rest and I get to go. So that's going to give you about 50% of the time being physically active. So that's a great strategy. Another strategy that we use is we use a larger teams. So if we have space concerns, maybe we're doing an indoor activity and we need to make the lines a little bit longer, we think a little bit differently because now instead of having one person go in a group of 5, we actually have 3 of them going to complete a task at the same time. We do this by having the students who are going to go hold something. The idea was kind of generated from track and field, how they pass a baton. So what we do is we give students flags. So if I'm on the red team, we would have 3 red flags, and so the first 3 people in the line hold the red flag. When the activity begins, my students know that if you have the flag, you get to go. So they get to go and do whatever the activity is, and when they return, they'll hand their flag in to the next person in line. Obviously, you're going to have somebody run into a case where they're going to get back handed to, and then they're going to get immediately back in line when somebody hands it to them again. So in this scenario, you get lots of opportunities to go, and you still get a little bit of wait time, rest time, which if you're really exerting a whole lot of effort, like we do in relays typically, you do get that little bit of a break that you need. The last thing that you can do to eliminate the biggest issue that we have when we have relays with long lines is we can reduce wait time by having our students do a physical activity while they're waiting in line. So you give them a yoga pose to do, or you give them jumping jacks, or cross crawls, or some other creative physical activity that they can rotate in and out of doing while they're waiting for these lines. The other component that we try to focus on when we're doing a high-octane relay is to make sure that we have a purpose. As I mentioned before, giving your students something to do so they feel like they're learning something or showing you something, or perhaps using it as an assessment, gives that relay a purpose. Relay activities lend themselves to collecting things, and there are lots of creative and meaningful things that students can learn while participating in a relay. So for example, some of the things that we do is we'll put out nutrition flashcards. You place all the nutrition flashcards out, and then we might be sorting them into their food group categories, or we might be going down and practicing different reading the nutrition labels on the back so that the students get an opportunity to do that. Or we sort the foods into everyday foods and sometimes foods. So that gives us some options. Using PE movement cards, you can create these on your own. You can laminate them. You can place them down, and as a student goes down, they pick one up, and then they have to demonstrate what is on the card. The examples that you can see here are they can gallop, they can turn, they can leap, they can twist on their way back to the line. So they get lots of practice doing different movement skills, a great thing to do in the beginning of the school year. Flashcards are another really awesome way to reinforce core subject material by giving them an opportunity to pick up a flashcard, and they have to come back and then add the flashcard totals up. So now we're working on math skills, but we're also getting some really good physical activity. So these are just some samples of the things that you can do if you have, you can also do vocabulary activities as you're going through and choosing different if you're looking for different things to use for collection activities, you can use vocabulary, whether it's your vocabulary, it's health vocabulary, physical education vocabulary, or the student's spelling words. You're still giving us a purpose for that relay, which makes the students participate at a higher level. All right, we're going to move on to small-sided games. Group sizes will vary based on several factors. Number one, your class sizes will impact how large you want to have your small-sided games, the activity that you are choosing, the skill level of the participants, and the amount of equipment you have, and your space available. One key component is the amount of equipment that you're going to be using. One of the things that makes me crazy as a physical education teacher is to see a physical education class outside playing kickball. You've got 20 kids in the class, 10 of them sitting on the bench, 10 of them out in the field. Only 3 of them are really fielding the ball. So what percentage of your students are actually being active? Yeah, really small, about 15%. So doing small-sided activities can solve that problem. Small-sided activities should be used to reinforce the skills that students have already learned. I mentioned that earlier. It's really important that you let the students know what those skills are. Hey, boys and girls, what did we learn last time? Oh, that's right, we did basketball dribbling. Well, today we're going to do this really cool basketball game, and we're going to be practicing those skills, the components of a good dribble. So you can include those concepts in your small groups. The other thing is when you do small-sided activities, it gives you an opportunity to do some assessment in small groups, watching them actually use the skills. One of my favorite things about using a small-sided activity is the freedom that you have as the teacher to change or modify the rules to help make the students more successful. In many cases, I can use the same basic small-sided activity with a wide variety of grade levels by just simply modifying the basic rules. For me, it's very important to focus on student success. If the rules or the objectives of the activity are impossible to achieve, students will shut down. We all know that. We've seen it. If I can't make the basket because the basket's too high, basketball's not a really great game for me. So we want to give students a chance to be successful, and modifying those rules are really important. Here are some of my favorite high-octane, small-sided activities, and I'm going to try to walk you through them as we go from slide to slide. Again, you're going to have to be patient and use your imagination as we go, because I don't have a chance to do a live demonstration, which is what I'm accustomed to doing, but we can make this work. It is important to note that I do have handouts that will be sent out in the link post conference, so that you can get a kind of a lesson for what you're seeing on the screen today, and then you can take that back and use it in your physical education setting. So the first activity that I had on the list was 4-down touchdown. I thought I invented this game, but apparently a whole lot of people do this, but I'll walk you through the basics of how we do this activity. The first thing is that the students get a partner, 1 ball, and 1 poly spot. So 2 people, 1 ball, and 1 poly spot. We use coated foam footballs for this activity. All pairs begin at the starting line, and the partners line up. 1's in front and 1 is behind. Partner 1 is the center who gets to hike the ball, and partner 2, who's standing behind, is the quarterback. When the quarterback says hike, the center will have the ball down on the poly spot, and then we'll hand it sideways to the partner who is the quarterback, and then the center turns into a receiver and will go out to a pass in the direction of the end zone. When the quarterback tells the partner to stop, they'll make a pass. We'll hopefully be looking for a good catching technique and excellent overhand throwing technique. And if the student is successful catching it, then we move the poly spot up to the new place as our new down marker. And the objective of the game is to move down the field by throwing and catching until we get into the end zone. When students get in the end zone, I let them do their famous 3-second end zone dance, and then both partners run all the way back down to the other side to start all over again. We don't have them go back and forth because I don't want students running into the back of each other because they're not watching where they're going. So the balls only move in one direction in this game. If a ball is dropped, that's okay. They pick it up, they carry it back to where the down marker was before, and then they just switch positions. Every time a ball is thrown, you always switch whether the ball was caught or not. For older students, we add the challenge and make it the actual 4-down touchdown. With younger students, I'm not so concerned about how many throws it takes to get down to the end zone, and the end zone, depending on the age level, can vary. I can make it longer or shorter. Again, modifying the activity for student success is very important. As the students get older, I want to see if they can make longer passes, so I'll move the end zone out a little bit further and see if they can make the length of the field in 4 or fewer passes. If they're able to do that several times in a row, then they can move to a bigger or longer field where they continue to work on that objective. Another way to make the game a little bit more interesting is we have large inflatable footballs. They're Omnikin Super Balls, and we pump up a whole bunch of them and we put them near the fence, and when a team scores a touchdown, they get to go and try to kick the ball over the fence for the extra point. So my students work on the counting by 6s and 7s as they score their points, so they're working on their math skills, but they also have a lot of fun by trying to add that extra component of kicking that field goal. So one partner holds and they kick, and then the next time they always switch. So if I was the holder, then I become the kicker on the next touchdown. Now, how do we add to this game to make it more challenging for upper elementary, middle school, and high school students? Well, that's when we get to this part, the 4-down touchdown pattern card. Now we're working on a higher, we're focusing on a higher skill, throwing to a moving target. So now we want our partners to choose a pattern, and the quarterback gets to make the call like they do in a real game of football. So they're going to get the ball, they're going to make their call, and they're going to tell them which one they want them to do. Do you want them to do a slant? And if you tell them slant, you have to tell them, are you going to go to the right or to the left? Now, for this one, I don't care if they're going down the field because it's too much side-to-side movement. So what we do is we actually space them out further side to side and don't worry about going for distance. They get points for catching the ball while they were moving. If they're forced to slow down and stop to catch the ball because the partner threw it to them where they were and not where they were going, then they don't earn the points. So the object here is to teach and reinforce that skill of throwing to a moving target. We can take this activity and go one step further. Once they've gotten the basic concept, we can add defense. So you put them in groups of 3s, you have a quarterback, a center, and now you have a defender. And the defender's job is to block the ball or intercept it while the other 2 are working together to make a successful pass. So you can do this, and the great thing about it is you're not playing 5-on-5 football with 1 ball and 10 kids. You're playing this with 2 people or 3 people in a group and 1 ball. So they get lots more touches, lots more practice using the skills that they would need in the game of real football. The other thing that's great about this activity is if you're not highly skilled, you can still be very successful in these example activities so that we're not eliminating the students who really don't want to play football. We're giving them chances to be successful. All right, our next activity is called Lord of the Rings. And you'll have to pardon the clip art that I used, but I thought it was kind of funny, so I used it. What you have here is you have your students that are either on offense or defense. So you will select some students that will serve as your defenders who will be in the middle, and they are the ogres, and they protect the rings that are in the center. You will split the rest of the students into 2 equal groups on either side, and they are each in hobbit villages. If you are from one hobbit village, you may never cross the center line where the hoops are, but you can go to the hoop. Same thing on the other side. In the first round that we do this, I'm just trying to get them to the concept of moving into the middle and then back out. The ogres do not have real clubs. Yeah, that wouldn't be very safe. Instead, of course, we have 2-foot noodle pieces, and they can use those to tag the players below the knee that are coming in to try to touch the rings. The hobbits want to get ring points by putting their foot in a hula hoop and then being able to run all the way back to their hobbit village. If they can do that without being touched, they get ring points. We can make the ring points worth different values. So let's say they're worth 3 points, and so we're working on our 3 multiplication tables. If they are tagged, no big deal. They don't lose any points, but they do have to go back to the starting line to start over again. So they get multiple opportunities. After about a minute or 2, we switch up players, and that way you can continue to add points. To add a challenge, the students can get bonus points by putting their hand in or their elbow in. This is a great outdoor game. If you're going to be putting your elbow in, you may not want to do it on a hardwood floor. You might want to do it outside in the grass. Now, let's take this to the next level. Now we're going to partner everyone. So every one in the group is now going to have a partner. And so we're going to be working on a different skill because now they each have a coated foam ball. Each team has a coated foam ball, and we still have the ogres in the middle with a noodle piece to use for defense. The hobbits now have to work in pairs to move the ball all the way to the ring and have one partner catch the ball while their foot is in any one of the rings. Now, if you have large group sizes, you can have 12 rings, and you can spread your field out. If you have older students and you want them running more, you can spread the field out side to side so that the hobbits have further to go. This is a traditional ultimate Frisbee, ultimate ball kind of concept. So if you have the ball in your hand, you do not get to move. You can pivot, and you have to throw to your partner. If your partner drops the ball at any time or the ball is blocked by an ogre, then you have to go back to the starting line and continue. Again, you earn points for coming to the middle. Let's take it the next step further. We've already built this game. They know how to do it. Now we put pins in the middle. And so now your object is to throw and catch as before, but now we're throwing at or rolling at a target once we get close. You think you're close enough, you can roll the target. The ogres can again block the ball out of the air and force the team coming, the offensive team, to go back, the hobbits to go back, or they can use their noodle pieces to block the ball and keep it away from the pin that's in the middle of each hoop. Offense and defense can be rotated in and out as the game is continued. You can also do hockey skills with this kind of concept. So you can use it for multiple activities, which is what I really like to do with all of my games. Another really simple concept is using multiple goals. We call this multi-goal soccer. And again, we have two concepts. You are either on offense or you are on defense. You are always partnered with the same person. If you are on defense, we have 6 goals here. I would have 6 sets of goalies. So we would have 2 people at each of the goals. And because the goals are round and there are 0 boundaries, yeah, you heard that right, there are no boundaries in this game, students can score from anywhere around the goals. So you need to have 2 people to cover around a round goal. Now, if you don't have multi-goal juniors, there are lots of different options for this. You can use large cones. You can use trash cans. There are lots of different options that you can find to use for this activity. The remaining pairs in the game who are not the goalies would each have a ball. I used soft, coated soccer balls, and they work together to dribble and pass and try to shoot it into the goal. If we score a goal, we become the new goalies. We put the goal on its side so no one else can score while we're getting set, and the former goalies would take the ball from us, and they would go to the middle starting cone, and that's where they would start. So the game constantly moves. Everybody knows their goal and objective because either I'm the goalie or I am attacking. So it's a very simple concept. We also use this for multiple activities. Again, we use the same concept, but now we're reinforcing our hockey skills. So we use the pillow polo sticks, and the students play with those. We can do a throwing and catching games, like an ultimate football, but now we're trying to throw it into the target or roll it into the target. So we have lots of possibilities with this game. And again, one of my favorite things in the whole wide world is to do non-traditional. You know what your job is when you're doing your job. So if you're on offense, you know that you can go to any goal around and shoot at any goal and try to score. The defense can block it, kick it away. And here's the cool thing. Because you have lots of people out trying to score and only 6 goals, 2 or 3 teams can be attacking the goal at the same time, which raises the success of the players that are playing. So your less skilled players might be smart and think, oh, well, these 2 teams are attacking. We go around back. The goalies aren't there. We can score. So everybody has a chance to be the goalie and be successful. All right. We're moving right along here. All right. So the next activity is a throwing, catching, and batting game. Again, I mentioned earlier about playing kickball. 20 kids, 10 on the bench, 10 in the field, and not a whole lot of movement going on. So we came up with an activity that we use that we call straight line baseball. I'm sure I got it from somewhere like PE Central or from PE Universe, but this is a really simple concept where we have 4 positions. So the students would be in groups of 4s, and you have a catcher, a batter, a pitcher, and an outfielder, and each person has a particular job. The batter, depending on their skill level, could use a tee, or you could have someone pitching the ball. If you're pitching the ball, my sell to the kids is you have to make it a good pitch, because if they don't get to hit it, then they're going to put it on the tee and hit it anyway. So it's more fun to pitch and have a ball hit out of the air than to have it off a tee. When the batter hits it, there are no boundaries as long as the ball goes in front of where the line of home plates are. I consider that fair, so it makes it a little bit more interesting as well, especially for our older students, because they get creative. The team who is fielding will try to collect the ball, the pitcher and the outfielder working together, and the batter will run between the hula hoop and the home plate as many times as possible, scoring 1 point for every base that they can get to. The player is out or their turn is over when the ball gets placed back in the pitcher's mound. The students will then rotate one position forward or to your right, or catcher goes to batter, batter goes to pitcher, pitcher goes to outfield, outfield goes to home to be the catcher. And they just rotate, and so they get lots of opportunities to bat and multiple opportunities to be a fielder and get a sense of the game of baseball in a small-sided activity. All right, so we're going to transition. Because of the time of the webinar, we are going to move on to some large group game activities. And in these activities, we're going to be focusing on breaking down our teams. Again, you can do one team versus another team, or you could do it in small groups when you're doing large group games. Again, everybody's involved. Most often, there are team goals in play, which keeps the action going. There needs to be plenty of equipment out during the game. I am not a big fan of games like sideline soccer, because you have one ball, 10 kids maybe playing 5-on-5, and everybody else standing on a sideline really not doing a whole lot. So those are not the large group type activities that I like to do. I like to get games where everybody can get a ball and we can do lots of really creative, crazy things and keep everybody moving. And again, when you're working in large group activities like the ones I'll be showing you, there are lots of opportunities to talk about building team skills. We're talking about building communication, cooperation, collaboration. These are all 21st century skills that are critical for students to be successful in the real world, that we have an opportunity in physical education better than anybody else to reinforce in our physical education settings doing games like this. And the last thing is modified rules is the way to go. If the games are too hard, nobody's scoring, they're going to stop. They're not going to want to play, and we want for students to be successful. Now, on the other side of that, we don't want it to be too easy, because if there's no challenge, then that's kind of boring too, and they don't want to do that either. So you kind of have to find that happy median, but following these general principles will help your large group activities be very high octane. All right, here are the 4. You may have seen some of these, so I'll try to walk you through the basics. We're going to start with "You Sunk My Battleship." All right, this game is another one of those where you're going to have everybody working in pairs. You're going to place, in the example I have here, we have 9 different sets, or what I call a battleship. A battleship is a hula hoop with 2 nuclear reactors, because battleships today all have nuclear reactors. So the bottles that we have in here are acting as nuclear reactors. You don't have to use plastic bottles, but they're very inexpensive. You can also use colored pins, which are very nice if you can get them, because it keeps your colors together and helps the students know where they're going to go once someone gets out of the game. Now again, when I say get out of the game, I'm not talking about a complete elimination. We do not do elimination games in my school. We do games and activities that give you a chance to get back in. If you go out of the game, you wait for your turn to get back in, and you probably will have to do some sort of physical activity to earn your way back into the game. So for this activity, we would have students in pairs again, standing near their battleship. You are not allowed to go inside or put any body part inside a hula hoop or be on the battleship. You are the defense system that is around your battleship, and you are also trying to eliminate the other battleships that are near you so that they can't knock you out. So this is a offense-defense type of game. My rule is that you must stay within 2 steps of your battleship. You cannot go up very close to the other teams because it's kind of unfair. And if you do it in gameplay, you'll see that it just makes the game very confusing if they get too close. And the objective is to knock down both of the nuclear reactors. Now, if one nuclear reactor goes down, then the battleship is fully operational, so you can still play. But once the second one is gone, that team is out of the game. They will have one partner take both of the nuclear reactors over to our health center where students are waiting for a turn, and those students will bring their nuclear reactors in, and once they stand the nuclear reactors up, they're in the game. Now, spread around the entire playing area are a whole bunch of coated foam balls. I mean, whatever you have. You got everything out there, and you want as many as you possible because it makes the game so much more exciting. Now, depending on the age level of your students, you may want to have them roll the ball only, or they can throw overhand. Again, the bottles are so short to the ground that if they're throwing down at the ground, then we don't have a whole lot of issues. With some of my 4th and 5th graders that I have taught, I've had to modify the rules because I had some students that could really throw a ball, and I was worried about student safety. So with student safety, I would change the rules so that they were rolling. So this is a very popular game at my school, and they really enjoy having the opportunity to work with someone else. And the way the game is played is if we run out of equipment to launch at the other teams, one partner can protect while the other person runs out and collects the equipment. But again, once I'm out in the middle of the game, I cannot throw it from where I am. I have to come back and share with my partner and stay within those 2 steps of the battleship. If you have larger groups, you put more hula hoops out. We probably have maybe 5 groups or so at most waiting in line. So again, we modify it based on the number of students. You can also do this activity. We typically do this as an indoor activity in the gym, but you can do it outdoor. If you do it outdoor, you put a little bit of water in each of the bottles, and they stand up really nicely out on the grass. So they can make it, you can make it work indoor or outdoor, but it's a very awesome game and really gets the kids' heart rates up. Very, very high octane. All right, we're going to transition to another activity. Now this one, hula hut is a classic as far as I'm concerned. The first time I ever saw it was at the 2006 National Convention in Baltimore, and J.D. Hughes is credited for one version, and the version that I use most often is from PE Central, which, who knows, J.D. Hughes might have written that too and submitted it. There are 2 teams on either side of the playing area. It's separated by cones. You will have the objective of the game is to build a hula hut, and I have a picture on the screen of a hula hut. You've got a bottom floor, 2 walls on one side, 2 walls on the other, and then a roof. So it's 6 hula hoops make 1 hula hut. On the screen, you see that I have some black circles on one side next to the goal. Those are what I call construction sites, and if you can throw the ball over the line, and get it into the goal, then you can pick up a piece of construction material, which is a hula hoop, and put it inside the larger hoops, which is the construction site. The objective is to build 3 hula huts that are standing at exactly the same time. Now here's the problem. While you're building, the other team is building, and smart players from the other team will realize that, hey, they're building them, so maybe we should destroy them. So there are lots of different jobs in this game, and students have to decide what they want to do. You can be a collector to get the hula hoops by tossing it into the ball into the basket, Or you can then become a builder if you're very good and quick and you maybe have a friend that they can build together, they work together. Once you've built it, you've got to guard it. So you'll have students who will want to protect the hula huts, and they'll block it with their arms or their hands to keep the hula hut standing. And then the last group, the destroyers, will try to go at off angles and try to knock down the other hula huts so that the other team cannot achieve the goal of getting 3 up at the same time. This one is this is a favorite that we do in the very beginning of the year when we're working on our throwing and targeting skills. And this one comes back every year at the end of the year during our field day. And the kids, it's like they've never played it before. They love it so much. So it definitely is a very popular activity. We're working on throwing at a target. We're working on teamwork and team building during this game. We're working on strategic play. So there's a lot of things that are going on in this game, and let me tell you, if you let them run with it, they will play until they are dripping sweat, which is one of the things I really love about it. Our next activity is from Dr. Kurt Henson. I saw him do this at a convention in 2009. in Indianapolis, and we've been using it at my school ever since. It is called four-corner roller-rama. You have 4 teams for this game. Each team has between 8 and 10 bottles in their portion of the space, so we have them in quadrants, if you will, and they place the different pins in the corners, and each pin has a hula hoop around it. And nobody can stand inside a hula hoop. If you're going to guard, you have to stand outside, so you can't be right on top of the pins, because then they would be impossible to knock down. But in this game, you now have 3 teams that you're playing against all at the same time. It is very critical that you remind your students that no player can stand inside a hula hoop. Now, the objective is to be the last team with something standing. During the game, all players must stay within their quadrant. You may not leave your quadrant at any time. Scattered throughout the playing area, once again, are a large number of coated foam balls. When the game begins, students may roll the ball and try to knock down the bottles or pins in any of the other 3 territories. This is always fun with first graders when they've played it for the first time and they turn around and knock their own pins down. So very entertaining. But as they get older, they get the concept. They're trying to eliminate the other teams by knocking them down. Now, when I say eliminate, that just means knocking their pins down. Once your pin is down, all of them are down. That does not mean you're totally out of the game. That means you can't win that round, but you can still pick up the balls and roll them and try to knock the other teams out. One of the things that we do to speed it up as the gameplay continues is we have our students play until at least 2 people are left. When 2 teams have been completely eliminated, we stop the game immediately, and the team with the highest number of pins still standing is the champion for that round, and then we get rolling again. And you can also change up the game to add some challenges. We have played this game in crab position before, so that every student has to be on the ground in crab position and must roll the ball while they're in crab position or in bear position. So they're on their all 4. So we're incorporating the fitness concept, and we're adding a whole new dimension by adding those fitness. You can do other challenges to make the game more interesting for our older students. If a ball is rolled and it hits your foot, you have to go outside, just outside your quadrant, and do some sort of physical activity to come back in. The only way you can defend your pins is by blocking it with your hands. Again, that forces our students to get down low and change their level, and it really does change the way the game is played. So a foot will also eliminate a player, but only for a short amount of time. Remember, don't sit them out the entire time. That's against quality PE. Another thing that you can do, if one team continues to win, we eliminate, when we start a new round, they get fewer bottles to start. So they have to work a little bit harder because they have fewer equipment to begin the game. All right, and our last activity that I'm going to showcase today, and I have about 2 minutes to do it, so we're going to be rocking and rolling here. We're going to be talking about Habitat Survivor. Habitat Survivor is a great collection game that reinforces the science vocabulary that your students need to know if they're in elementary school. They need to know things like predator and prey and the law of conservation and habitat and a whole lot of other things that are related to this basic concept. Each team on the one side of the playing area, and for this game you can see my pictures will tell you that what habitat we are in. We are obviously at the ocean. So the little fish are going to be on the scooters, and your job is to scoot all the way across over to the coral reef where you can collect some food. When you collect your food, you can put it in your hand, and you can scoot your way all the way back. Now, my rules on scooters is they have to be on their bottoms when they're doing it. They can't be on their knees. I don't want fingers getting run over. I don't want them on their bellies because I don't want their hair getting underneath the scooter board. So they have to be sitting on their bottoms. Now, good fish can scoot all the way across without falling off. If you fall off, that's considered being out and you've lost your turn. So it's really important to be right in the middle of that scooter board using it the right way. As you scoot your way across, in the beginning we don't put out a predator yet. We just let them go and work on scooting. After a round or two of them collecting some food, being successful, we now add the concept of predator. The predators will come into the middle, and their job is to tag anybody who is coming across and effectively eating them and therefore not letting them get to the coral reef. If you're tagged at any time, you always stand up immediately, carry your scooter board back, and give it to the next person in line. If you're successful collecting a noodle piece and getting all the way back to your team, you put your noodle piece down on your poly spot that would be over here on that end of the space by your scooter boards, and you give the scooter board to someone else. Now, let's talk about the scooter boards. Again, I always do small teams for this because of the space available. We do groups of 4s, and 3s or 4s for this, and each team gets 2 scooter boards. And the reason for this is there's nothing worse in a scooter board game than to have what I call the plotter who goes out with the one scooter board. 3 kids are waiting in line, and that child will go to a base, and I mentioned the base being a sea anemone in this activity, maybe an upside-down laundry basket. That's what we use. They will stay on that base forever. Those poor kids who are waiting are yelling for their teammate, go, go, go. That child will not go because they're worried about being tagged, and nobody on their team gets to go. So you have to have at least 2 people going at any one time so that the plotters don't ruin the game for everybody else. If you don't have scooter boards, you don't have the space, you're not inside, we do this game running as well. So you put them in small groups. They would have flags if it's their turn to go to try to collect the noodle pieces on the other side. The predators in the middle have a 2-foot noodle piece, and in that game they're not sharks, we call them electric eels, and if you get tagged with the electric eel, then you have to go back. As the game continues, you add challenges for the students by, for example, taking away the sea anemones. The sea anemones were damaged by an oil spill, so now they have fewer places to hide. It makes it more difficult. As the game continues, you can add, and it talks about taking care of our environment. Another area has been overfished, and the predators have no food to eat, so now you add double the number of predators. So again, students are running, collecting, taking turns, having a lot of fun, but we're also building in this concept of adding science curriculum in, or reinforcing it in our physical education classes. All right. Boy, that seemed like that went really fast. My presentation is over, and I'm going to turn it over to Tabor. Hopefully we have some questions from those of you who are on the call. And again, I really hope that you've enjoyed some of the activities that I showcased in the presentation. And as one more reminder, if you're on the call or signed up for it, when you go to the link to see this recording, you will also have access to handouts for all of the activities, so that it'll walk you through them again, so that if you didn't save the screen or you don't want to save the screen, you can get those, download those handouts at a later time. Tabor?
Thanks, Chad. Well done. Yeah, just a reminder for those of you on the call, on the right-hand side of your screen, type in any questions that you might have for Chad about any of these presentation topics that he covered here. A couple of questions here. First one, Chad, can you take us through a little bit how you use the relays, the small-sided games and large group games, you know, in terms of skill development? Would you do a relay, a small-sided game, and a large group game all within the same class period?
Well, in my setting, we have the students for 30 to 35 minutes. So it really depends on what we're doing. Sometimes we'll use a relay, like, for example, if we've been teaching basketball dribbling. The students might come in and we might set up a relay activity to kind of start us off as our instant activity. So every student will have a ball. They all get to practice dribbling, but when they get to go across, they can go and do their little drill, or multiple kids can go over and do their drill, and they'll tag their partner, and then they get to go across. So we use that as our warm-up activity, and then we might do a small-sided game or a large group game using basketballs a little bit later. Sometimes it varies, and sometimes we'll do 2 in 1. Oftentimes, because of equipment or the space we have available to us, we'll do a simple warm-up that may not use equipment and then really focus on the equipment during the main part. Again, typically when I do a large group game activity or a small-sided game activity, I will do that the entire PE time. And one of the things that I really try to focus on is scaffolding the activity, meaning that in the very beginning we're working on a particular skill component, and then we'll kind of fold in other components. For example, one of the basketball games that we do is Basketball Alien, and their spaceships are the basketballs, and they have to travel their spaceships across to the other side of the universe, so they're dribbling it across. But then as they get better at the game, I change up how their ship is allowed to move, so they can no longer use their dominant hand to drive their ship. They have to use their non-dominant hand, or they have to do a crossover dribble, or they have to go backwards. So we scaffold it and make it different so that they don't get bored doing the same concept over and over again, but they get multiple opportunities to practice a variety of skills in that same way.
Okay, great. Question specific to the Habitat Survivor activity that you have on the screen right now. Are the predators on the scooters also?
Yes, yes. When they're playing the game, what we'll do is we'll choose an entire team of like 3 or 4 players to come out, and we have special scooters, designated scooters for them to sit on and be used during the game just for them as predators. And as soon as their job as predator is over, they flip the scooters over, they go back to their original spot, and I pick a new team to be the new predators.
Okay, great. And another question specific to this activity, are the bases the cones in the coral reef? Is that the base where they move to?
Yeah, no, in between, somewhere in between, and that's the one thing I left out as I was like looking at the screen. I have upside down baskets that we use, and we place them. So I would have maybe 4 of them at a time, and I use those as the bases, and they're between where the scooter boards are on the left-hand side of the screen and where the coral reef is. So they're somewhere in between, and then as the game progresses, we take those out,
okay,
like one at a time.
And a question specific to pedometers, and I know this is a question that I've heard asked before, so curious to kind of hear your thoughts on it. The question is, in using pedometers, the person who's asking this question, it's been challenging for them because students will manipulate the devices. They'll take them off and shake them. Wondering how you deal with that in your class.
That's a great question. My rule is you shake it, I take it. So it's pretty cut and dry, and as soon as you take a pedometer from a student who's not using it correctly, it sort of draw attention to that fact. Then the students have a tendency to be a little bit better stewards of their pedometer. So I put the responsibility and the onus on them that, and again, I also tell them before they put them on, you know, it's your role and responsibility, and we use the character traits, being trustworthy. We talk about those concepts in physical education all the time, being responsible, respectful, trustworthy, and those kinds of terms of making sure that you're being honest about what you're doing. Because if you're giving me a false impression of how active you are, you're really not cheating me so much as you're cheating your own personal self, and you're giving yourself an inflated thought of how active you are, and that's not reality. So you want to be honest, and so we keep those concepts constantly driven into their heads as they come into physical education every day. It really does have an impact on their ability to be more trustworthy and respectful and responsible.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I've also heard the similar answer to this question at the high school and junior high, middle school, when a portion of their grade might be more linked to their activity time with the pedometer. If you're manipulating the data and it's taken, that can have effect on the score for the day.
Absolutely.
Great. We had a ton of people on the webinar today, but I think there were just a lot of interest in listening to what you had to say about all these activities. Some great things here that people will be able to take into their classrooms right away next week. One other question here. This is similar to the question that I had asked earlier. Do you use activities such as these you presented to teach all of your skills, such as shooting and throwing, or do you use stations? So I think what we're getting at here is, do you incorporate the skill instruction part of teaching into these type of activities, or do you keep that separate, use stations or something like that?
That's a really great question. Typically, we use the small-sided games to reinforce or to do more of an authentic assessment of how the students are performing the skills in a more game-like situation. Typically, we do a lot of two-line activities where we're actually teaching the basic skills and breaking them down individually or in large group. We call it discovery instruction. For example, with basketball, the students get a ball, and then we just tell them to go bounce the ball in open space. So they go to the open space, they bounce the ball, and I don't give them a whole lot of rules. I just want them bouncing and catching in the beginning, and then we start breaking it down by, okay, now I want you to just bounce it with one hand only, and then we talk about what dribbling is, and then we talk about the components of dribbling. So then the next time they come into class, they have an understanding of what we consider the 5 components of a good dribble are, and so then they use those in those small game activities or those relays so that we can see them using that practical application. Another great way, as mentioned in your question, is to use different stations to go and make sure that you get direct instruction. So you give maybe a fitness station, but then your skill-related component is taught in a smaller group with, less children, and so you can really get to the basic skill, like an overhand throw, to make sure that they're turning sideways, to make sure that they're stepping with opposition, to make sure that they have a high elbow, making sure that they throw and follow through. So that's a really great question. Typically, we use more of the small-sided gaming and the large group games sort of at the end of each unit, and we do more direct skill instruction in the beginning of each unit.
Great, great. Well, at this time, I'm going to announce the winner of our Yuki Ball activity. Again, that is an $800 item, one of our most popular activities right now, and the winner is Charles DeMond from New Hampshire at John Fuller Elementary. So Charles will be in touch with you, and that'll be on the way. Let's see, we have one more question trickle in here. Question regarding pedometers. Do you keep a log of student steps each time they come to your physical education class? And does every student get a pedometer?
Yeah. Okay. We do not keep a track of every time they're in because we don't use them all of the time. Often, it's about 50% of the time they have them on, we'll have them log them so that they can see their progression as they go. We have a class list that we put up we Velcro onto the wall, and so each day at the end of the PE time, when we're using them, they can go and log in their steps, and then we can compare it from month to month, how active they were doing different activities. And that for them, we also use it as a teaching tool to say, look at this activity that we did today. Why would you have had less steps? Pretty much everybody had less steps. Why would that be? So they're making some connections about their physical activity levels and intensity levels in that fashion. We do have enough pedometers that we can put a pedometer on every student during their physical education time. We actually do running clubs, so we actually have about 150 pedometers because we have that many students that participate in our running club, and we only have maybe up to about 60 students that come in for physical education. So they come in, they each have a little pedometer number code, and they pick up their pedometer, they put it on, they check it, and then they use it for their daily activity. So to answer your question, every student gets a pedometer when we're using them, and sometimes we log, sometimes we don't.
Okay, great. Well, that concludes today's webinar. I want to remind everybody that you will receive emailed to you a certificate of participation. Chad has also put together some other materials that go along with this webinar that we will email to you. You'll have a chance to also get a link to the recorded version if you'd like. We will have the announcement of next month's webinar coming out shortly, so keep an eye on your email for that also. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Chad, and we hope you can join us again next month. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.